Good morning, everybody. We're just going to wait for a couple of minutes until all the audio connects for everyone. Sarah, I'm assuming that you're taking care of people who are in the waiting room?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'll wait for, there's quite a few in there, so I'll give it a few.
Yeah, it's taking a while for it to load when I press submit.
Got it. Okay, it looks like we've most people who have wanted to join have started, and some more are coming. Good afternoon, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here and see all of you who have joined to listen to one of our first webinars that we're giving throughout the National Engineering Month. My name is Dr. Marilyn Powers. I am the president and chair of the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. And as the advocacy body for engineers of Ontario, OSPE creates a space for our engineers to discuss matters where engineers excel in and collaborate on solutions. The effects of the climate crisis are seen globally through natural disasters, ecosystem disruptions, and much more. In 2022, OSPE formed the Climate Crisis Task Force, a space where select members volunteer their engineering talents to collaborate on multiple initiatives that aim to create more sustainable practices within the province. And joining us today is Jeff Sheffrin, our chair for the task force. And we're going to have a conversation on the climate crisis task initiatives, structure, and more. So welcome, Jeff. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you volunteered to be the chair of the task force?
Marilyn, thank you for the opportunity, and hello to everyone. I'm excited to be here, and I'm so glad that Climate Crisis Task Force is one of the first up on the series for the National Engineering Month. That is just terrific. And I feel it's terrific because it's one of my passions. And as people will tell you, I'm up on the rooftops ranting and raving about the fact that we are running out of time. But let me give you a bit of background. I graduated in mechanical engineering and a degree in manufacturing engineering. I did a postgraduate degree in human sciences. And then I moved on through the corporate world with 4 different international companies and managed my career to A, have fun, and didn't realize until I got well into it that what I was also doing was picking up a whole pile of functions. I was the senior manager responsible for just about every corporate function you can think of, including the president of a small pharmaceutical division for one of the large pharmaceutical companies. So career-wise, my background has been quite broad and quite varied, and that was a deliberate choice. Then some years ago, a partner of mine had already set up an engineering consulting business, was working in the food industry because that's his background. I joined him at some stage in that process and bought pharmaceutical and cosmetics. So we run an engineering consulting practice that does manufacturing, builds factories, does processes in those 3 disciplines. In addition, I have my own strategic management consulting business, and one thing led to another with OSPE, and it was in the summer of 21, I think it was, when OSPE asked for some Eng talks. So I threw my hat in the ring, and lo and behold, delivered a couple of Eng talks. That led to some blogs. It led to a couple of editorial pages in the Voice magazine, and it allowed me to start ranting and raving about the fact we're running out of time. In my opinion, 2030 is already too late. To hell with net zero 2050. You're going to be in shit creek as far as I'm concerned by that time. So, I've now added my own podcasts, which say Mother Nature doesn't give a crap. And there's episode 5 is going into the can this coming Friday. So that's my plug for the day. And that's a little bit of my background, Marilyn. Is that too much?
No, that's fantastic, Jeff. And obviously very busy with the couple of companies that you have running, as well as all of your volunteer activities. One of the things that we want to do in this webinar is kind of explain what task forces do and how they come about. So we already have seen with your brief introduction how busy you are, and that you must figure out how to strategically spend your time on what you feel is most important. So could you tell us how you see the task force initiatives being selected, and what initiatives is this particular climate crisis task force currently working on, and how do you see those evolving?
Well, that's a great starting point, because whilst I tend to be preaching on the global platform, because this is a global issue, what's really helpful to me is within OSPI, we're the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers Advocacy Group, Ontario, right? So my agenda selection in terms of topics for our climate crisis task force is relatively straightforward. It is those things which we require to be doing in Ontario to get us into the future to mitigate the effect of the climate crisis. So to me, that's really a very straightforward sort of mandate. And we get involved with, let me just check my notes, we get involved with SMRs, we get involved with the grid, we get involved with EV, we get involved with rare minerals, the mining of rare minerals, that is. We get involved with nuclear, right? And we also get involved with hydrogen, because we need that for transport. They are all initiatives that OSPI has on the agenda. So our task is to put together information, white papers, position papers, whatever we need to do that allows OSPI to challenge or help direct our political leadership in Ontario to move the needle forward in favor of climate mitigation. So that's where I am. So it's a fascinating field, and from my point of view, it's extremely helpful to be part of it. And I love the fact that I've got some great volunteers who roll up their sleeves and start digging into some detail. We've only had a couple of meetings, as you mentioned earlier. We're quite new, but nonetheless, we're making progress and we're digging into some important issues. Darlington and nuclear Pickering and nuclear is one of them. And there are other things as well. We're currently into the rare minerals piece, and there are other things on the go. So, it's a pleasure to find ways of waving the flag and pushing the buttons to try and make this thing happen.
That's great. I'm assuming I'm not the only one who doesn't know what SMRs are. Could you explain?
Small modular reactors.
Small modular reactors. So this is
if you don't have $5 billion to spend on a nuclear plant, which has maybe 4 nuclear generators in it, like which is what Darlington is, right? Then you go to a small modular reactor, which gives you perhaps about half the power level of a large reactor, but it's small, it's modular, it's factory built. You don't quite pick it up on a truck, but almost. You can put it on a couple of trucks and you can move it to remote communities or particular needs where you need sustainable power. So that's what an SMR is all about.
Okay.
And we've got the first one going on here in Darlington.
Okay, very good. We're going to delve into that a little bit more, but first I'm going to pick up on what you just left with, was that you're not alone in this task force. You have many community members, and we all know that the climate crisis involves a multidisciplinary approach. Many people, many experts and many subject matter experts need to come together to talk about the intersectionality of everything to make any substantial change. Can you tell us who makes up, what kind of voices make up the task force that you're working on then?
Well, I've got a range of people. It's not a very big group, and it doesn't have to be. I've got a range of people who are, there's some new graduates involved, some people that are on the broader platforms of sustainability and trying to preach the message. some technical people that are in particular industry areas. So I've got about a half a dozen people that are well equipped to contribute. The point is, that's not my only resource group. If we have a particular project or a particular challenge, then we get in a subject matter expert to complement the committee so we can then broaden our discussion basis to provide OSPI with the ammunition it needs to move things forward.
So we've got an audience here that probably has lots of professional engineers in it. Are there any engineering voices that you are looking to recruit for the task force? Well,
the answer to that is both yes and no. And I'll tell you why the no for a start is because my view is OSPI has approximately 20,000 members in Ontario. So if I take a very simplistic view, as far as I'm concerned, I have potentially 20,000 engineers I can call on. So can I manage a group of 20? No, that's not the point. The point is we have everything we need. Some of our professional engineers are, of course, in what I would say slightly compromised positions. They work in fossil fuel or something like that. And they have to earn a living. And these are transitional things that we have to deal with as part of the climate crisis. But nonetheless, I don't need to, always looking for volunteers who can bring in particular bits of expertise. But at the moment, that's an opportunity that people have by putting their hat forward and their name forward to OSPI, right? And we'll work with what we have. But meanwhile, we are just not short of resources because all of the people listening out there might just be interested, and the rest of the 20,000 are also available. So, not short of resources. Not short. Just need time to manage them so we can focus. So let's delve into a couple of them. Just pick one of the areas that you're focusing on now, and give us kind of an idea, because you listed them off very, very quickly there a while ago. So if we could just delve into one or two of those areas, that'd be great. Well, one of the ones that I'm pushing, which isn't that high on our agenda just yet, but I think it's critical within Ontario, and that's the infrastructure of the electrical grid capacity. If we're going to go EVs and we're going to make green hydrogen, which chews up a lot of electricity, we need to make sure our nuclears are up to speed. We need to make sure we have at least twice, if not 2.5 times, the electrical generating capacity in Canada that we currently have. That includes Ontario, right? And then we need to make sure that can be distributed. Our current grid does not have the capacity and the infrastructure strength, and in some areas it's a little bit dated. That is an important investment, which is going to be a political nightmare because it's going to take an awful lot of money. Hence, SMRs are useful because we can stick those out in the further afield regions, right? And there's just so much work to be done in that area. To me, it's just an incredible challenge. But that's not the highest one on our list at the moment. Oh, okay. But the SMRs allow you to not have to have the big distribution grid, but you put them at point of need. Yeah. We can meet the requirements of northern and remote communities by having some SMRs up there with a localized grid infrastructure to supply a community area. That to me is significantly useful. There are some challenges with that. An SMR is a complicated piece of equipment. And if you dig into the media over the years, we've all heard of water problems in the remote communities. I deal with purified water systems. I know what's involved there. Those things are not overly difficult to manage. An SMR is much more complicated. But the good news is, through the electronics that we have available, we can remote manage an SMR, and we can also do inspections of grids and power distribution in remote areas through drone technology. So the technologies we have these days allow us to look at how we can take an SMR into a remote community and not to have 6 scientists living there in order to run the thing, right? So those are all parts of the evolution. So lots of ideas. So you said that one's not high on the list, the energy infrastructure. What is high on the list? Well, in the short term, the first two things we've been pushing back on, because OSPI doesn't go out and just wave the flag to say, yes, Mr. Ontario, let's get this done. We have pushed back on Highway 413 because we think it's the wrong decision. We've also strongly pushed back on greenbelt land development for housing because we think that is a wrong decision. So, but those are political problems which aren't under my jurisdiction. That's up to Sandra as the president of OSPI to find ways of pushing those buttons and waving that flag, right? But the other side of it is, rare minerals is becoming more and more important. And we have a lot of that here. So we've got to invest in that part of the infrastructure, right? So it's on our agenda at the moment. The other thing that we're pushing at the moment is to make sure that Pickering gets refurbished. Bruce is going through a 10-year refurbishing cycle right now, right? That's in excess of $100 million that they're spending. Darlington has done a very successful refurbish on budget. So Darlington is in good shape at the moment. Pickering was scheduled to go down in the next couple of years. And we're saying, don't do that. So we're pushing that and trying to find ways of supporting the province in developing their thinking about, we're going to have that. We cannot get out of nuclear. The anti-nuclear people, I'm sorry, we need every piece of green energy we can get. We have a lot of hydro and a lot of nuclear here in Ontario. If Ontario were a country, we'd be in the top 10 in the world in terms of green, if we were a country, because over 90% of our energy comes from hydroelectric and it comes from nuclear, right? The other comes from wind and solar. So that combination equips us extremely well. We were fortunate, clever enough to get rid of coal years ago, but we still have natural gas generating stations for peak loading. And the few percent, the less than 10% that's missing is currently run off natural gas. So that's the Ontario picture.
Okay, very good. Jeff, I think there's some questions coming in the chat, so I'm going to turn to those so that we give our listeners some a chance to have some say. So here we go from Colin. Colin is in his final semester of environmental science undergraduate degree and considering taking an electrical engineering diploma to supplement his knowledge. And because he'd like to get working with the clean energy grid.
Right.
In your opinion, Jeff, what's the best way to continue with his pursuit?
If he hasn't graduated yet, I assume that he's doing co-op work in appropriate fields, and that would be an appropriate way to start. And you really want to think about your career and try and pick co-op opportunities or early career opportunities in those companies that work in this area, right? I think there are lots of opportunities. There are people who are saying we're going to have trouble transitioning away from fossils and things like that. Where's everybody going to work? Well, I think our friend here, thank you for the question, has got into the right field, because there's just an incredible amount of work emerging in all of the areas of green technology. And the grid and the electrical side of it is just a critical piece. So you're in the right place.
That's excellent. Do you have any, can you name some of these places he might look?
Well, I'm assuming he's in the Greater Toronto area. So there's no reason why you wouldn't be connecting any of the nuclear stations. There's no reason why you wouldn't be connecting with the hydroelectric systems here. OPG, Ontario Power Generation, the Independent Electrical Systems Operator, IESO. There's just lots of organizations. So a Google search or a browser search of some sort will likely give you a small shopping list. And then it's a question of seeing whether you can put your shoulder against the door and pry your way in. Because if that's the field you're working in, you're a valuable resource and we need you.
Excellent. I hope that gives you some good direction there, Colin. So from Dr. Enoch C. Jeff, you have only a half a dozen people, 6 people on your team, and you suggest that you don't need more people on your team. That sounds a bit elitist. Dr. Powers suggested the consideration of intersectionality. Which aspects of intersectionality have you considered?
I haven't directly considered that. One of the things we do, and part of my task within OSPI, is also to deal with we have about 5 or 6 task force on sustainability, energy, on infrastructure, on EDI, etc. So we have a number of them, and my task is to take an overview of the energy crisis, climate crisis pieces in that to try and make sure we have some uniformity. So to answer your question, I've been delinquent in that area and I haven't really given it a lot of thought. We're only into meeting 2. We're only, how long, Sarah? 3 months into this program. So we have lots of opportunity to grow and diversify.
That's excellent. So we have one coming in from, I'm going to have trouble with names here, Tayeb Rosenali. And they have asked, what about hydrogen as a fuel? I'm pretty sure I've heard you talk about this when I met you on Tuesday.
Yep.
Okay.
If we're not going hydrogen, I'm happy to say in Ontario, we're looking at green hydrogen. I don't want blue, gray, or turquoise hydrogen because they all come from fossil fuels or sequestering of carbon in one form or another. If we're going to go green, we have to use the reformer process, sorry, the electrolysis processes. That takes an incredible amount of energy, but that's the way we have to generate hydrogen. Hydrogen is a very dense fuel. Therefore, it's very energy efficient once you have it captured. The small disadvantage is you need it under high pressure, or you've got to change it into an ammonia-based format to make it more transportable. So that's one of the challenges with it. But as an energy efficient fuel for things like transport trucks, it's just an excellent opportunity. And there's work going on in this area. So hydrogen, green hydrogen made in Ontario is critically useful. And for that, we need sustainable electrical power, which is where things like the nuclear power stations come in, because nuclear is our base load. Hydroelectric is our base load. The variable load comes from some hydroelectric and also from the oil generating systems that we've got, sorry, the natural gas systems that we've got. So, trying to pull all of that together is an important part of what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, great. So just to do hydrogen as a fuel, we're going to need the nuclear and the hydroelectric in order to produce the electricity to produce the hydrogen fuel.
Back to the earlier comment, we need to double or even triple Ontario's capability if we're going to go total EVs and hydrogen and all of that. We are way short of capacity and we've got to spend money on that. And that's going to be tax dollars, which people don't want to talk about, but we've got to do it somewhere.
That might lead us right into this next question from Deborah Tang.
Right.
Would the current electrical grid support the intense increase in the usage of electric or hybrid vehicles? The government is pushing for more people to drive electric, but how is the current charging infrastructure or available power sources going to actually support that?
I can answer that question in one word: inadequate.
Oof.
Our infrastructure is not adequate. Let me give you a small example. California. Last year in California, people started buying more internal combustion vehicles than electrical. Why? Because there wasn't enough charging infrastructure and the grid was struggling with capacity. Some of that comes from hydro. They've had droughts. There haven't been enough water in the dams to generate electricity. This is not a utopian solution, right? We need our base load. We've got to make this work. And the answer is it can be done. But what we have at the moment, back to my opening word, it's inadequate. We don't have enough.
So I'm going to go off script here and ask your question. You often say we need leadership from government. What do we need governments to do? If you could have them all there and they're ready to listen, what's the sort of list of things you're going to say you need to make these things priority?
Well, I think we've already covered that in the OSPI mandate, but let me come at it a slightly different way. I look at the climate crisis with 4 key elements. We need technology, we need leadership, we need money. And the 4th element is the leadership. We have a lot of scientific, technical, and engineering leadership, which is why I'm trying to wave this flag to engineers, right? We don't have enough political leadership. And we don't have enough political leadership for 2 reasons. One, if we're in an autocratic country, those leaders don't give a damn. Here we have a democratically elected country and our leadership is on 4-year cycles. And they're busy working on what gets them elected. And if we as the voting public aren't pushing them about the climate crisis, it doesn't get high enough on their agenda, right? The other part of it is, of course, money. Where does it come from? Mm-hmm. The tax base. And if I can sidetrack to my global positioning on that, if you go back to the pandemic, we spent roughly, depending which source you're looking at, between 18 and 24 trillion US dollars globally on fixing the pandemic. Did anybody have a piggy bank big enough to smash open to get $20 trillion out of it? No. What happened? The governments around the world printed the freaking money and we made it happen. It's the same with the climate crisis. Mother Nature doesn't give a shit. Oh, excuse me, doesn't give a crap, right? Mother Nature, she's going to hit us over the head with a 2x4. And that's going to happen soon and quickly. What we need to do is to get the leadership out there, because my down payment for this problem as a crisis globally is $40 trillion. That's only half the cost, in my opinion, right? Ontario, well, we need maybe $3 or $4 trillion. That's not exactly within our tax base. So that's where the leadership starts to struggle. Where the hell do we get this money from?
Mm-hmm.
And they're on 4-year cycles. So I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit pessimistic and cynical about that.
And that's fine. Where do you think it could come from? The money.
In the short term, it has to be some courageous leadership decisions saying, we've got to persuade the public that we've got to increase the cost somehow. We've got to have the public paying for more of it. We've got to get private investors involved. We've got to get the infrastructure through, the private investor process. And there's got to be ways of doing that. And that'll change when our climate crisis, as it currently is, becomes a climate catastrophe. That's when it'll change. That's happening. It's happening now, but it's not quickly enough.
Yeah, and I'm just going to pop over to Lisa Espana here. If climate change projects involve a lot of political influence and decisions to be made by politicians, how will your team challenge them? And your team is already collecting data. Have you made presentations to them?
Not only have we made presentations to them, but we've actually been at Queen's Park, and we had an OSPI session at Queen's Park this past Tuesday, right? Just under a week ago. And that was a terrific way of meshing with the politicians and hearing firsthand where they are and giving OSPI the opportunity to put the platforms on the table, right? One very interesting thing there is a small group of us, and you were one of them, Marilyn, we met with Mike Schreiner, who's the head of the Green Party. And Mike is very keen on hearing more of the OSPI initiatives because he's the only sitting member in the Ontario legislature from the Green Party, but he's a sitting member. So he has the ability to put things forward. And he's very much an ally on the Green page. And to be truthful, I also spoke to some of the other party politicians at that session. And they're on the Green page. It's just a question that as a province, we have so many things to juggle, right? Where does this get on the priority list? It's back to Mother Nature coming at us with her 2x4. That's sort of how to get up the priority list.
Right. Yes, exactly. No, it was a very successful day, and something that happens annually. OSPI has a lobby day with the Queen's Park where we set up meetings with MPPs for task force chairs to meet with the MPPs and then host an engineering reception in the evening. So
and that was excellent.
Successful.
Yes. That was excellent. Yeah. So Marilyn, one of the things, just to comment, I'm somewhat not directly answering many of our wonderful questions from our listeners, and I apologize for that. But as soon as you get me on my opportunity to rant and rave about the climate crisis, I tend to dig into other things. So my apologies, ladies and gentlemen.
That's fine. Let's go to Paola Pinging. We've seen that we've seen what hydro prices can do to the political landscape, the Ontario Liberal downfall of 2018. Mm-hmm. How are we going to persuade people to spend money necessarily to triple our grid and enable electrification? And how are we going to persuade Ontarians to vote for the politicians that enable electrification, even if it means paying higher bills?
That's an excellent question. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a good answer for that because we're now dealing with taxes and we're dealing with politics. And those two are very difficult subjects that politicians love to dance around and present a lot of hot air. But to be respectful to them, they are challenged by what they have to deal with. The only way that's going to change is if Mother Nature puts so much pressure on us as a populace that we need to do something, or we as a voting public make the climate crisis the highest item on the politicians' agenda. Otherwise, things will be the status quo and they'll sort of dribble along, but we won't get to where we need to go. So you're the voting public, get out there and vote.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I have been working at all of the things they say that you could do as an individual to, you know,
Yes.
reduce your waste and drive cleaner and live more sustainably. That's great.
Yep.
I've been doing that for years. Now I need some bigger changes to be happening from somewhere else.
I'm on exactly that same page, Marilyn.
Yeah, and I think what we were seeing with COVID is that everybody saw it as a massive threat, and there was no question there was a threat, right? Whereas the climate change, I think some people feel it drastically, and others are going on with their day-to-day life, and it's not seemingly a threat to them at the moment. Which is why it's going to be hard to get the general public thinking in those terms, I think.
Can I draw a little parallel?
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that got me into, I got an interest in environmental matters probably in the 90s. And the thing that first got me started was a book written by Rachel Carson called The Silent Spring. She wrote that in 1963. She died in 1965, ironically, from the very cancers that her book was about, because her book was about DDT and the indiscriminate use of chemicals. If I draw, and I'm going to get myself into big trouble here, but if I draw a parallel, and I've started reading the book again because I'm saying she was getting a lot of flack from the chemical engineering, from the chemical suppliers, because they were making money out of this. And I hate to say this, but I see a parallel here. We're polluting the atmosphere with carbon dioxide from coal, oil, and natural gas as our biggest contributors. And what's happening? That CO2 is coming from the fossil fuel industry, largely. It's coming from other sources, but a lot of it's coming from there. And the issue is we get a lot of pushback from the fossil fuel industry. We are where we are. Fossil fuel still has to be in transition. We can't shut it all off because we don't have the resources to replace it all. But we've got to focus on getting rid of coal. It's the biggest killer out there. Then we have oil. It's the second biggest killer out there. And natural gas is the third biggest. And if you look at those stats and you look at nuclear, hydro, wind, solar, all four of them sit as being the safest energy sources globally that are available to us. The others are way, way up in the death ranking ratings. Just look up the stats on it. So, you know, we just got to get on with this stuff. Rachel Carson is an interesting parallel as I see it.
Very, very interesting.
Let me just read you, Marilyn, let me just read you one thing right at the introduction to Rachel Carson's book. One of the quotes she says from Albert Schweitzer, his great sort of, he had lots of quotes. The quote is, "Man has lost the capacity to foresee and forestall. He will end by destroying the earth." That's where we're going.
We're headed there. Oh.
What the fuck is up, Kyle?
I don't know what's happening here.
Something has happened.
Okay.
Interesting.
Maybe we just got Zoom bombed.
You got this, Travis. Make them wait for it.
What's happening?
I am there. Okay. Hopefully I've corrected the problem now. Yeah.
Yes.
So funding is a problem. So we've just been talking about that. Are there any initiatives with private sector to collaborate with the government in order to address the funding issue? Are there anything going on that you know of?
I haven't really researched that side of it. I'm sure there is, because a lot of organizations, certainly in the electrical generating side of the business, you know, they are working with the government and they're looking for, you know, some sort of partnership activity. The government is investing, you know, for example, both the federal and the provincial government has invested into the SMR, the small modular reactor in Darlington. right? There's, I can't remember what the number is. It's something like $900 million is coming from those two sources, which is a substantial contribution. So, you know, it's OPG that's primarily responsible for this, but there are resources that are marrying the federal, the provincial, and the private sector. It's going on. I've not researched that a lot, but I know it's going on, and we will see more of it.
Very good. I'm just going to look here. It looks like we have a raised hand. Let's see if we can ask Ben to. Do you have a question, Ben?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
We have captured your family.
I will be removing him. We can continue.
Thank you. I was just trying to figure out how to do that. Did I accidentally mute Jeff? I did. Okay. I just need to figure out where he is here and unmute him.
Jeff, if you can please.
Have I unmuted now?
Yes.
There, you're good.
Good.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
So we've had some interesting little
Yes. Very.
excursions.
Very. Let's. I'm just going to read some comments that Tyab has put in there. We need more engineers to be interested in politics and running for office as MP or MPPs or councillors.
We have one in the legislature.
We have one. And that's down in Tecumseh, correct? He's an MPP. Andrew.
I believe so.
Yeah. Well, he's the only PN. I think I did run into another MPP who is an engineer.
Okay.
Nationally trained engineer.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely could use some. Let us know if you're interested in having OSPI help engineers gain some of those skills. Jeff, this comes from Dr. Enoch C. If we want sustainable long-term change to deal with climate issue, we need grassroots movements, not just professional top-down solutions that heavily rely on political resources. Have you considered this?
Well, the answer is both yes and no, but let me tell you why I say the yes piece. My view is that we live on a perfectly viable, self-sustaining planet. We're the only species on the planet that creates infrastructure for our own needs beyond sustainability. Right? So I think we are the orchestrators of our own demise in this area. Grassroots movement, everybody that sees this as a potential problem needs to find ways of making their contribution to the solution. And Marilyn and I have mentioned, it's all very well us thinking at driving less, recycling more, making sure all my lamps are incandescent. I turn them off as much as possible. All of these things are small, minuscule improvements. But if we have 1 billion people doing it, we make some progress. And that's happening behind the scenes. It's the big picture stuff we need. And from the grassroots viewpoint, I don't think we as engineers are into the Greta Thunberg approach, and she's done a remarkable job of raising the profile, right? We are looking at more practical solutions, and I'm trying to engage engineers because my rationale is if the planet is self-sustaining from Mother Nature, every single other thing, everything we look at, we touch, we deal with, comes in one way or another from an engineer. So if things need to be reversed and fixed, there is nobody better globally than the engineering community to get their hands around what needs to be fixed. So yeah, we need grassroots movements. We need ways of influencing the politicians. We need ways of influencing the finance people and the private sectors. But ultimately, the solutions have to come from engineers rolling their sleeves up and making things happen.
So we need everyone on board, working in all different directions.
There's 85,000 professional engineers on Ontario. There's 170,000 professional engineers in Canada.
And probably 3 to 5 times more engineers that aren't necessarily licensed, but have the skill set.
That's the whole world. I mean, I go to some of the wilder regions of maybe Africa, right? I don't necessarily have a structure of professional engineers there, but people do things and make things happen. They have an engineering bent. That's fine. They're the people we need to make things happen to move us forward. Doesn't matter what your qualification is. If you have the mechanical aptitude, the bent for engineering and progress, make it happen.
Excellent. I'm going to go to one last, I think there's one more question. There's a couple more questions, and then Dr. Enoch C has his hand up, so we'll get to them in a minute.
Right.
Is there any validity to direct spending towards green steel to make renewable energy infrastructure projects viable for wind, solar energy, or is it better to direct those funds for nuclear? And additionally, what is the political perspective on nuclear power and nuclear capacity expansion?
To be perfectly frank, I don't think I can properly answer those questions.
Okay.
We need to invest in nuclear. The Green Party is not pro-nuclear. I'll leave that alone. Right? But the answer is I can't. Is there a set of green credentials we should be pushing? Anything that gets people engaged in moving us forward on this path has to be a piece of the right thing. So my indirect answer, not knowing anything about that particular thing, is, of course, make it happen, bring it on. We need to move forward.
And I just, since meeting you, Jeff, I have listened to several of your podcasts, and Mother Nature Doesn't Give a Crap, and you do have an excellent podcast on nuclear energy. So I do recommend anybody to go look up that podcast. Available. I listened to it on Apple Podcasts, but it's available on all the.
It's on LinkedIn. It's on Facebook. It's on YouTube, etc. If you pull up my name on a browser, it's also attached to my name as well. So, and what you're looking for is episode 4 with Matthew Meiringer. He's the Vice President of North American Young Nuclear Generation. So he's very much pro-nuclear and speaks about all the positives, including debunking some myths around nuclear safety and around the waste fuel issues. These are problems that exist, but they're problems that can be managed.
Good. I will just ask Dr. Enoch C to unmute and ask his question.
Okay, thank you very much for letting me speak. So one thing that I wanted to mention after hearing what Jeff mentioned about that engineering is the solution. I personally think that, being an engineer myself, I think that it's more than just technology. Right. I think that if anything, the pandemic has taught us is that the best way, and I agree with you about one thing about the planet itself is self-sustaining, and that's nature itself is self-sustaining. If anything, the COVID pandemic has taught us is that all we really need to do is back off. That's really all we need to do. Is to back. Look at how much the air quality has improved because people stopped driving. Right. So and the way that I see COVID or many of the pandemics happen is because that we are encroaching nature too much.
Yes.
It's really nature's way of pushing back and say, hey, humans, back off.
Yes.
Right?
That's exactly right.
So I think that it's more than just technology. There's also a social aspect of that. As how we humans see ourselves, our role here. I agree with you that we are not sustainable. Quoting Agent Smith from the Matrix, is that we are like the virus. We just keep growing and growing and growing and growing and just use up all the resources. So how do you see from an engineer's role, what we can do as what we talk about is like, how can we help backing off so that the planet itself can heal? It's a more indigenous way of looking at, environmental sustainability. What are your thoughts?
Well, that's an excellent question. So, us as a species backing off, I don't believe that's going to happen until Mother Nature gets more violent with us. But more importantly, we need to get off the position where it is greed and money that is driving where we are. we need to develop taxonomy. Taxonomy is a way of looking at the sustainability side of investment processes, right? We need to get to the stage where the success of our society, the success of businesses is not just measured by dollars on a balance sheet, it's also measured equally by sustainability. When we wake up to the fact that the balance sheet has to look at sustainability as strongly as the dollar, because that's what our economy is driven by, we're not going to get anywhere. Sustainability has to be the key. And if you don't make that part of the balance sheet and therefore make it part of the business success measures and factors, my fear is we're going to do too little too late. But I love your question.
Excellent. Here's one that came in from Edward that I think is something that we all struggle with, is this cradle to grave sort of, measure of how green anything is, whether we call it clean energy or green energy or renewable. Can you speak to some of those?
Let me give you a couple of examples on that one. If I build a nuclear power station from scratch, or I put in a large hydroelectric dam, I've got a tremendous amount of CO2 at the front end being delivered. Why? Because I need a lot of concrete and a lot of steel to make it happen. Once they're up and running, they are clean and green, right? It takes a number of years for a hydroelectric dam to mitigate the carbon dioxide piece. But if I look at the others, like solar and wind, in the last couple of years, we've now actually been able to figure out how to make wind turbine blades recyclable. One of those companies is here in Ontario. I think it's in the GTA somewhere, right? Previously, we're getting to the end of life of a lot of wind turbines. Those are landfill. Who the heck needs that in landfill? We need to figure out how to make them recycle. That's the sort of thing that's happening. And these are the things that have to happen to move us forward. Cradle to grave is a critical piece of the thinking, and we never look at that. No disrespect to EVs, but I've yet to see a decent analysis that says everything going into an EV, the EV itself through its life cycle, the battery recycling when it needs to be replaced, and the car at the end of it, I have not seen a carbon dioxide mass balance for the cradle to grave piece, because it's not as green as you think it is. If I have an EV in Saskatchewan, I'm wasting my time and money because I'm still generating from coal and oil there. If I have an EV in Quebec and Ontario, thumbs up. But I still don't know the CO2 generation from my cradle to grave piece. We don't look at that stuff. It's critical. Never mind. Another hobby horse of mine. I'm sorry, Marilyn.
Sorry, my eyebrows are going up going, how do I as consumer decide whether to, where to go with this?
You can only make the best decision based on the information that you have and based on the research that you've done about, do I want an EV? Is it going to work for me? My girlfriend's talking about an EV, and I think she's quite right, except at her place, she doesn't have a charging infrastructure. Well, okay, that's pretty useless. So I can't go for an EV there. I have to go for a hybrid, right? But I still have to charge it somewhere. So, all of these sort of things, they need to develop coherently and in unison. We're not quite on that path yet.
Very good. I think we have time for probably one question, and then we'll wrap it up. Let me choose. There's several here.
I can imagine.
This is interesting. Let's go to Susanna Toma. What is their plan to be done with those who created artificial ski slopes close to the equator? This will get your global hat on here. Why are we cut off work when others can emit CO2? And this is a global matter. What, are we catering to some polluters? What is your thoughts around that?
My fear is the answer is yes. What drives it? Well, it's part of society. It's part of human nature to want to engage in things like that. So somebody spends money because ultimately they spend money to make money. So they're attracting people there and they do that. That sort of stuff I don't think is going to stop. I personally would not, I would not go to a ski slope in the middle of Sahara to go skiing. You know, it's just not on my agenda. But people will do that, right? That's, to me, back to the earlier comment I was making about the fact that we're the only species on the planet that re-engineers the planet for more than just sustainability. And not to be disrespectful to that piece of business, that's a classic example. That does nothing for sustainability, but it does what the human species does. We migrate, we integrate, we communicate, we interact. It's the way we are. We're social beings. Back to that Stevenson comment at the outset.
So I have a couple people asking this question, so I'm going to ask it just to close off here. Nuclear fusion.
Yes.
Is it viable?
It is absolutely viable. The first thing, we've been at this for about 60 or 70 years, right? And it was only about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when one lab in England made the first breakthrough on that. They sustained nuclear fusion for 5 seconds. That's ridiculously small. But when you think you're containing millions of degrees in a plasma or a magnetic field, and you're able to generate surplus heat for 5 seconds, that's big. There's at least 6 or 7 major fusion projects going on around the world, down in the US, over in Europe. These are critical to our future, critical, but they're decades away. And let me guess, out of my $40 trillion down payment, I might need 10 trillion of that to move fusion forward. Another one that's interesting is getting solar panels into space. You get 24-hour days sunshine on solar panels in space, and then through microwaves, you transmit the electricity to Earth to a half a dozen grid stations around the planet. So as the planet evolves, there's always another grid station picking up the energy, right?
Interesting.
Somebody is starting that with a $16.1 billion investment just to explore it. And when you explore it, that'll only make a very small bit of it. You're going to need a few $1 trillion to make that happen. That's another few decades away. You know, we have all of the technological solutions and capability. We just need to get on with it somehow.
Excellent. Jeff, this has been great. I want to leave those that are listening with something that they can do. If they want to get involved, how can they help?
Well, pay attention to, I can't give you specifics, but I can suggest pay attention to what's going on in the climate crisis world. Get your information from factual sources. I deal with about a half a dozen factual sources that I know I can rely on, but I don't get my stuff from webcasts. I don't get my stuff from this, that, or the other, because they're always slanted by that particular author's views. So I go back to a few basic fundamental areas where I know I can get reliable data, and then I verify that data. So as individuals, to make things happen, all I can suggest is you pay attention. Listen to what's going on. If you're picking something up in the media about a new initiative in the mitigation of the climate crisis, make sure you're reading it from a creditable source and not from some greenwashing source or some politically biased source or some, you know, pay attention to where you're getting your information. Think about it and decide if you can make a contribution or if you can make use of it. I don't know how to do anything better. I'm sorry.
That sounds great. Well, that's all the time we have for in this session. Thank you, Jeff, for joining us for this conversation, and we're excited to see what the task force will produce in the next year.
Delighted to be here. Thank you.
If anyone is interested in learning more, please email advocacy@ospi.ontario.ca. Meslene will probably, she's just put that in the chat there for you, advocacy@ospi.ontario.ca. Join us next week for a conversation with our Research and Innovation Task Force. And thank you, and please tune in to all the incredible NEM events for the rest of March. That's National Engineering Month. Thank you, everyone.